Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm an intuitive coach and mentor,
And I'm Louisa. I'm an awakening coach and energy healer.
and we're your spiritual besties.
We're just everyday women having an extraordinary human experience.
You see, we've both been led down the path of amazing discoveries through the power of spirituality.
So, we're here to share our experiences as we dive deep into all things sacred.
Our hope is that we can contribute to the collective conversation to help you feel less alone and more confident as you walk the path to becoming more connected with the universe.
We'd love for you to join us each week as we share our discoveries and navigate this journey together.
You and I have talked a little bit about human design, as I am obsessed with it and have been for a little while. Haven't actually dug in as much as I really want to, but we've talked about it a little bit. And you were like, oh, I think I do know my type. Here's what it is. And then,
Yes.
so of course, I then immediately had to find out more about that and then share it with you to be like, look, it's really you. This is you. It's two things there. Number one, I think it's hilarious and so strange that after a few weeks of us just having weekly conversations, I listened to this whole podcast about your human design type and was like, oh my gosh, this fits her so well.
And I was so excited to be like, oh my gosh, it does fit me so well. So many things when you shared that and I listened to it, I was like, oh my gosh, that is me. It is totally me.
It so was. And what's so funny is with human design, every single person I've talked to who has not even dug into it very deep, but just found out what their type is and then found out a little bit more information about it. Every single person I've talked to is like, oh my gosh, yes, that sounds just like me. That is so me. But also, just to back up for a second, I think that with human design, it's like this categorizing people in different
Mhm.
like types. But I think the difference for me is that there are lots of different nuanced aspects about it. So I'm a projector, but also I'm a mental projector. There's three different types of projectors, but I'm a mental projector specifically. And then I'm a 5/1 mental projector. So while there's the different types, I think there are five, maybe
Of projectors?
five different designs. So
Oh,
the human design type is the overarching thing. Yes, so there's five types. There's manifester, generator, manifesting generator, projector, and reflector are the five types.
so I'm a manifesting generator.
So yours is like literally a combination of two, right? So I guess from what I hear, I'm not an expert in this yet.
Yet.
So when this whole framework of human design came to be, there were only four types. And I don't know who, but eventually they figured out that there's this fifth type that is a combination of the manifestor and the generator, which is the manifesting generator,
Can I
which is
introduce y'all
you.
to
Really makes human design unique and different from all these other sort of like frameworks that people have liked to put themselves into for years and years, is that it's so nuanced and that there are all these different aspects. I've heard this number and I can't remember what it is, but there's like thousands of different combinations that are possible. And so your whole chart is completely unique to you. Yes, of course, there are other people out there who have the exact same chart, but not, oh, there's only five different types. And so you have to basically fit into one of these five boxes. So there's just all these different nuances to it and all these different levels. And I think that's the part that separates it from other different frameworks. And ultimately, everyone I've talked to who's even just known their type, which is that like general category, as soon as they learn about what that means, they're like, yes, that's exactly me.
Yeah.
That was my experience 100%. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm a projector. Let me read about this. And I was like, oh my gosh, it all makes so much sense. For me as a projector, it was even more powerful because one of the things with being a projector is this need to be seen.
I
And I was
love
like,
that.
I feel seen, really. Someone gets
That's
me.
awesome. That's so awesome. That's, oh my gosh. Having that need and then that being confirmed. I love it. That's so interesting because I was going to ask you, what are the characteristics of being a projector? And you mentioned that one, which is amazing. That's so funny. What are some other ones? I looked at mine briefly and then you sent me that episode and that was 1000% me. And then what I started to think about was, I wonder where projectors and manifesting generators where we meet.
I think that some of our alignment is probably further into our charts, which of course we need to do is to go further in and compare all the different gates and all the different centers and see. But I thought it was interesting because, so if the general level information about projectors, my aura is penetrating and focused, which I thought was interesting because yours is open, enveloping, and impactful. And so it's almost we come together. And so when I read both of those, I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense because you're just so open. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this person gets me. But you also are open. You're not blocking my intrusiveness that's there. Okay, I accept this. Like, I'm open to this. So I felt like that right there. I'm like, that makes so much sense for the two of us and why we connect so easily. So, a couple more things like for the projectors, the strategy is wait for the invitation, which to me has always been one of the most confusing things. But essentially, in order to really be in alignment and connect with other people, I need to wait for an invitation for that. And it's so funny because when I learned that and I looked back throughout my life, oh my gosh, I had the best outcomes. It was when there was an invitation laid out there or like just an opportunity that was presented to me. And then I took the person up on it. And I thought that was so funny because with us, you had posted about someone coming and being a part of your podcast. For you, the strategy is to respond, which I think is more so just responding to the inputs around you. And that's how you find that alignment. Also, as a mental projector, which to me, I always get this wrong because mental projector really means that I actually need to speak it. I need to have a running dialogue of what's happening in my mind in order to make decisions better. I need to bounce it off of someone. And I think that that's why when we have conversations with each other, it moves both of us forward in this direction that we're trying to go, or not even trying to go, whatever we're supposed to go, I guess. Because I'm actually verbally saying it, and then you're able to reflect it back to me in a way that makes sense. Even just hearing myself say things sometimes.
Yes.
Now I get it. It makes so much more sense than when I was just like in my head spinning.
Yeah. And do you find that you can get stuck there in your head spinning? Because that has been me. I'll spin forever.
So manifesting generator is the human design type that has this energy, and you are producing so easily, which is the opposite of me because producing, I don't produce any energy naturally. I take it from other people.
I love this.
But I think that also is another way that we combine really well because you are producing this energy and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
our conversations bring me so much energy.
Yeah.
But the generator piece you're producing, you're capable of this engine running, right? But the manifester is actually someone who is designed to let people in. They figure things out and they need to let people in on it. But what's so crazy about the manifester is even though that is what you're meant to do is to create stuff and present it, it is really challenging for you to actually present it and tell people and show people. And it's called informing.
Yeah.
It's really challenging for manifestors to inform, to talk about the decisions that they're making and the things that they're doing. But when they do, that's when they actually see this alignment and this progress and this success that will move them further and that will actually create so much more harmony in the relationships around them. And
Is so perfect. Scarily perfect.
so
So accurate.
it's so funny because it's like literally talk about it and you're like, this is your true nature and this is how you naturally respond in a situation. They're like, oh my gosh. Yes, that is so true. And so this is where also I think for both of us, we're meant to, projectors are here to be guides, to guide people along the way, right?
Yeah.
And manifesting generators produce things and create things that they are meant to show people and almost like some behind the scenes, show people like how I did it or what I'm doing. Also, the other thing about manifestors, and so I'm guessing this is also partially true of manifesting generator, is that you are meant to make your own decisions and follow your own decisiveness, which I think is where a lot of times that not informing comes in because you already know this is the thing that I'm doing and I'm just moving along my own path and I'm making these decisions and this is how I'm going to go. And so then you feel like, what's the point in you telling anybody else about it? Because I
Yes,
already know.
yes. That's exactly my thought process. Is why am I gonna just tell them to waste everybody's time and energy? I'm like, I already know what I'm gonna do. I'm going down this road.
But it's the opposite. And so what's funny is when you move through things like that, the people around you that you're in relationships with almost resent it or have a really hard time with you following that path and not saying anything.
Drop. Yes.
But when you do tell them, then they fully accept that you've made the decision and that's what you're doing. And then they're just like on board.
Yes.
It's almost like this magic snap of the fingers where it's now we're
Yeah,
good.
but it's not easy for me to tell. I'm usually like, there's no point. I'm wasting everybody's time. I already know what I'm doing. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. I'm like, this is scary. I feel like she's calling me out. This is exactly this like too just so
Feeling really
accurate.
attacked right
Oh
now.
my God. It's amazing. Think about like even as you're saying this, I'm like writing this, right? Because it's things that I know about myself, but that confirmation, that reassurance, right? Because we're all like, oh, I don't know, is this good? Is this part of me good? Is it bad? But it's no judgment. This is what it is. And I love that. I
And
love
that is
that.
another thing too. My feeling and the excitement and joy that I got from knowing that I was a projector and knowing what that meant was this being seen that, oh my gosh, I'm finally seen. I finally feel like someone gets me. For manifesting generators, it is a permission. So it's okay to be this way. It's okay to move through my life the way I've been moving through my life. And it's okay. I don't have to feel bad for it. I don't have to feel like I'm doing something wrong. I have permission to just be this
Being
way. So, what's interesting about your type is that because it's like this combination of the manifestor and generator, it's like a spectrum, right? And all of the types are like this spectrum, but yours especially because some people are more heavily generator and some people are more heavily manifester, but just based on what you're saying, I feel like you're maybe leaning a little bit more toward the manifester. But I think that's why you got this knowing that you were supposed to do things like create your podcast, start
yes.
your YouTube channel,
Yeah.
even though those things were like, no, that feels really uncomfortable for me to just narrate my being to other people.
Yeah.
But it's no, because that's actually what you're meant to do. That's how you have this impact. And that's how you help people on this larger scale is by letting the people in, telling them about what you're doing, how you're doing it, the decisions that you're making, the direction you're going.
That is so on point, right? That is, and that's right. Like the whole way through, I was so uncomfortable. I knew I was supposed to start a podcast, and instead, I
Mhm.
started a YouTube channel because I was like, there's just no way. At least on a channel, I can focus on my face, on visuals, and I can make people's attention be more on what is in front of
You're
them than just what
seeing.
I'm saying. Yes. And so it was funny because the podcast was the first inkling that I got, but I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Well, 6 months later, I did it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the way that you're meant to impact. But I think too, I do feel like you have some of the generator piece because with manifestors, the energy is pretty inconsistent. And while you do produce your own energy, it's not this production line kind of a thing. But
So
with
true.
the generator piece in there, like you're able to just keep going and keep producing, and like you just have this natural energy flow that happens for you. But for projectors, we literally are non-energy beings. And so max capacity for me is probably 3 to 4 hours of actual energy sucking work
Yeah.
I can do in a day.
It's so funny. It reminds me of the conversation we were having the other night where we were messaging late at night and then I messaged you early in the morning
Yeah.
and
It's
you were
like, when do
like,
you sleep?
yes. You were like, when do you sleep? And I was like, I don't know. I just like I have it down to a science now. I can function 3 to 4 times a week on 3 to 4 hours of sleep. Good function, not dragging. Dragging would be 2 hours. I can function on that. What I have learned about myself is that if I don't feel like I put in as much work as I possibly could, and this is why sleeping disturbs me. I hate that I have to sleep. Is I'm not actually going to rest when I lay down.
Whereas for me, I think this is a big area of my life where I struggle because as a mom of 4 little kids, and I was in the 9 to 5 workplace for 19 years, my natural energy is not conducive. Like, I'm not compatible with motherhood or with working a 9 to 5 because ultimately, as a mom, especially one who's working a 9 to 5, I have to be on. I have to
Yeah.
be available. I have to be producing, doing things 24/7, basically. And I think that is also one of the reasons why once I did have kids and I was still in my 9 to 5, I really felt challenged by the fact that I had this job that was taking so much energy and felt like I just have nothing left at the end of the day when I come home with my kids. And it was such a struggle for me and so challenging. And I could feel it. I hate that this is how I'm showing up for them because they're basically getting nothing because I just produced all day. And so I'm like done.
Wiped out.
I think that was really one of the biggest things that pulled me toward entrepreneurship was this idea that I could have more control over when am I working and how am I working and what does my schedule look like? How am I balancing the tasks and getting things done? Which is funny because I was already in entrepreneurship before I found out about human design. But then once I found out about human design, I'm like, I'm a projector. I just don't have energy. Like, I need rest. I need downtime to recharge and be able to function. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that's
That's
exactly
awesome.
how I feel.
That's awesome. I love that you now get to honor that out of all that. I love
Mhm.
that now you get to honor that. You get to honor yourself. You get to honor and be in that space because even though being a business owner is no joke, you get to decide when you put the time in. You get to decide when you take the meetings. You get to decide, which is something that we don't have in our 9 to 5s. And I also wanted to say, you keep saying like a mom of four. You're a mom of four little children. Because there's a difference. I'm a mom of two, but one of mine drives, has his own car, has his own life. But you're like four little children that need you 26/7. If there's more time that could be added to the day, they would take that up too. So really, I love that you get to honor that.
Another conversation that we've had is around boundaries. And I think for me as a projector, that's where boundaries I've found are huge. Because if I want to actually show up in the way that I want to show up in any area of my life, I need to protect my energy and I need to have boundaries about when I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's super important for you. That makes so much sense, right? And I think it's important to know this, for example, knowing and sharing with people that you are a projector, because maybe sometimes for people who may not understand, why does she need 10 hours of sleep? And it's like, this is why. Not that it's any of your business why, but this is why. It's because I know my type, I know who I am, which helps me to confirm what I need, and I need 10 hours of sleep or however many.
I think one of the reasons that most people who learn about human design feel pretty compelled then to start talking about it and telling other people about it is because it helps so much in relating to one another and understanding. Once you can understand these things about yourself and have some way to verbalize it, like you said, I already know all these things about myself, but it's just not been like verbalized and pulled together in such a way that made so much sense.
That's it.
So once you can do that for yourself, then it's okay. Now I need to learn about the other people in my life, and I need to tell them about themselves, and we all need to learn about each other
Yeah.
because once you understand the way that people naturally move through life, then you can not necessarily, I guess, accommodate it, but just understand it and just
Yeah.
be accepting of it. And oh, this makes sense now. They're not doing it for whatever reason I think they're doing it for because I made it up in my head. But I can see that this is why when this thing comes up, they respond this way.
And so right along those lines, think about the quality of relationships that you're able to have. Because when you understand yourself, when you take this information, now that I can articulate it, when I come into a relationship with someone or even the people in my life currently, I can be like, so I've learned this about myself. So not only am I coming into the relationship more authentically, not only am I coming into the relationship with very clear boundaries, very clear goals, very clear ideas that allows the other person to create whatever expectations they want to create based on what I'm sharing and the type of relationship that we're having. But I also think that once you understand yourself, it opens the door to being like, I know about myself. It allows you to be more compassionate, more
Yes.
open. Yeah.
Yeah.
Accepting, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Passionate. I think empathetic
Yeah.
because I think that's one of the other pieces that comes along with it is even if the other person isn't super open to all of this, you can almost then see what probably feels like a struggle for them.
Mhm.
You said it's really hard to inform, it's really hard to tell people about the decisions that I'm making because I have already made up my mind and I already know what I'm doing. And so just even knowing that is okay. Now I know that you're not just like keeping it from me, right?
Right. That makes sense. Like now you know that I'm not like maliciously keeping it from you. Now you know that it's just something that's not easy for me. This is crazy because I do feel since you first mentioned it, like, so aside from our just natural, right? Like we just flowed from day one before we knew anything about each other. I have felt that from you where it's, I don't have to explain the why behind that. Do I know that she understands? Yeah.
So one of the things about projectors too is because we're non-energy and we take that energy, we are so much more aware of other people's energy. And so when I'm having conversations with people, it's so weird because I still don't necessarily have a way to verbalize it to people that wouldn't understand. I feel your energy, right? There's so many people that I'm like, how do I say this? When you said that thing, I could tell that you're holding back from me and your energy just got a little bit lower there. So I think that is one of the things that has happened in our conversations. And for me, once I tapped into that and once I understood what was happening, I really leaned in. And so when I have a conversation with somebody, I am very intentional about focusing on what is their energy telling me right now? What is this vibe that I'm getting from this other person and from this conversation? What is that telling me? And being more in tune. And that's why I say I'm an intuitive coach because that is what I use. Someone can say something to me, they can tell me something that's going on in their life or their business or something. And I'm like, oh, here's where you're stuck. When you talk about that thing, though, like you're not, you're really good. So lean in there. That's what we were talking about is like, as soon as we met, we started having these conversations there isn't judgment there because even if you're not verbally telling me something, I'm like, oh man, okay, I get it. Here's how she's feeling about that thing. Like I understand it.
Yeah.
I can be so much more empathetic. And I think it's just that for me, it was believing that. That what I was actually getting was there, and I'm really feeling this. And that's obviously always been the way I am. I've always been a projector. But when I was younger and as I'm growing up, I like learned to distrust that. I think we all have a sense of intuition that we, as you grow up and as you take in stories and different things from different people in your life, a lot of times you learn to distrust that, especially as women. But I think it's there. And I think for me, it really has just been like, no, I just need to trust that and go with it. Because when I do, that's like where the magic happens. That's when people are like, oh my gosh, you're so right.
This is so funny because the other day I was thinking, I was like, she's so intuitive. I wonder if she knows how intuitive she is. Because we both have gifts, right? Like I have gifts, I have visual gifts,
Audio. Yeah.
yeah. But I've noticed that you read energy so well. And so I've always thought of myself because, like we've talked about before, I don't live amongst all the intuitives. I live in the real world where I am quite awkward and different than everybody else. And I always have felt, oh, I can sense energy. Like I feel people's energy. That's something that I've always felt. But when I've been chatting with you, I'm like, it just doesn't compare. Like our ability to sense energy is just like, she's so on it, like every time, all the time. And now that makes so much more sense, right? It just makes sense that you can read it. I'm so busy over here, just like that I have a harder time reading it. That just clicked for me as you were saying that. It's the first time that I have words for it.
And you are producing energy. You're projecting more of a vibe. I always wonder what it feels like for someone who's not a projector to come in contact with me. I think that you obviously still get a vibe from me or get like this openness, but because I don't have this basically like strong signal that I'm sending, because for me, there's all these people around me and I can feel their like strong signals. And I was actually talking to someone, she's a former client, but she's a friend still. And I was having coffee with her earlier in the week. And when we worked together last year, I was not like as into human design, but I had brought it up with her a couple times. I was like, I wish I knew your human design type because I feel like I think I know what you are, and I wish I could get confirmation. And I finally got confirmation when I was having coffee with her. And she's like, here, let me look through my notes like you when I asked you. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
somewhere. Let me look.
Somewhere.
And she told me she's a projector. And I'm like, oh, I knew you were a projector. I knew it. I could feel it. And I was like, this is why. And I went through the whole list of things that she and I have talked about over the last year of all the different places where she's struggling to feel more aligned. And I'm like, this is why, this is why, this is why this. She's okay, hold on. Let me
I know,
let me
pen
write
like
all
me.
this
I'm
down.
like,
She's like,
hold on.
you're so right.
So your energy, what it does to me, I think it's this, it's not that it like tones it down because I don't feel like, oh, I have to come down. It's almost like I can just be and comfort is that doesn't cut it though. Welcomed even where it's where some people it's like my energy I can tell is just they're like
But I was saying, like, that's what it totally makes sense because with our human design type, it's the opposite as far as our auras. And I have that penetrating aura, but I think that's where I'm going in and I'm like truly just like reading all of it. I'm just like digging deep and really reading that energy there. And yours is more open. And I think that's why it works because you're just like,
yes.
I have this energy and you're just open to having other people read you in some way. It makes sense because you're here to tell people, hey, this is what I'm doing. Here's what I'm doing. And so when someone comes in and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so interested in finding out more and going on this deeper level. You're
And
like,
I'm like,
yes.
yes, what do you want to know? What do you want? All of it. It is so accurate. And what a life-changing thing for me too, because it's that permission. That's what it is. And even though I didn't have words for it 5 minutes ago, that's exactly it. It feels like a gate just opened for me, to be honest. Maybe that was the holdback for me was that I needed permission to be that. Maybe there has been shame with regards to that.
That's so funny because that was one of the things that in learning more about manifesting generators in your life, what has happened is either you conformed, like you took on the conditioning of what was around you and learned to move through the world in a different way than what was natural for you.
Yes.
And then that's where that shame, like you just said, like feeling like I don't get to be me, I don't have that permission to be myself.
Oh,
Or on the other end of the spectrum are the kids who like just are out there doing their thing, changing direction, like all this energy and all over the place. And they don't conform, they don't take on that conditioning, but then there is still shame because then they're seen as wild and unpredictable and the bad kid, right? So there's this shame around that piece of it that they feel. So it totally makes sense as to why, for a manifesting generator, you would feel this sense of permission, whether you were on either side of that kind of like
yeah.
spectrum there, right?
Yeah. Which is funny because I have been on both. In my early 20s, I lived a very fuck it kind of life. I was just like, it is what it is. Even to the point where it was like, it is what it is. And if I have to do 20 in jail, then that's what it is. But this is what I'm doing. Like, it was that. But it's so funny because there was still that shame. There was that shame at that time where it was like, oh, I'm just living my life and doing what I want to do. And there was so much shame because that's literally how my family looked at me. This wild child, this loose cannon who has no future, has no direction. She fucked it all up already. But then I was like, all right, I guess I'm gonna be an adult now. And then what happened was I just hid exactly what you just explained. And I just went through life and it just didn't feel natural for me. And I think that's where I just became completely depressed, was because it was like I was moving through life and I felt dead inside because it was like, oh, this is life. Like I'm gonna go work 9 to 5, and then I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna cook dinner every night at the same time. I'm gonna sit down at the table every night at the same time. And it was just like conforming to being and looking in the house and all the things the right way. And that depression just like doof. It was like, oh my gosh, that's what knocked me down. Then I just wanted to be completely unseen. Then I literally would look for jobs. There was like, I want to be in the back of the room. And I would literally tell anybody this. I'd be like, I want a job where I'm in the back of the room. Nobody knows I'm there except on payday. And that's how I flowed through life. Like for so many years, that's what I wanted, unseen, unheard, because it just all felt so unnatural to me. So it makes so much sense that you're like this or that. And I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. Both ends of the spectrum.
It totally makes sense. That's like part of this because once you learn about this and you understand this and know how you've been naturally showing up in the world, like your natural way of showing up in the world, you probably haven't been doing it. But when you understand that, then it's you just did. You start looking back on all these different things in your life where you were clearly out of alignment with that. And now you know why it felt so terrible to be that way.
That's a wrap for this episode.
We hope you found some inspiration, a helpful tip, or maybe just a good laugh.
Remember, amazing human, you are not alone on this path to connect with your inner wisdom and the universe.
To stay connected and keep the conversation going, subscribe to our YouTube channel and our podcast so you never miss an episode.
And if this episode resonated with you, share it with your friends, family, or anyone who might find value in it. Until next time.